Hey everyone, this is Evelyn V, and I'm just going to do a quick little video on gnome numbers, also known as numbers. So first we have nothing, which is the gnome equivalent of 0. It used to be naught and also none, but because none is spelt pretty similar to gnome, there's a push within the gnome community to replace none with naught in all official documents. Alright, next we have 1, and it's mostly used to count, gnomes mainly use it to count the number of hats that they can wear at any given time. And next up we have Sherlock, and this is obviously named after Sherlock Gnomes. Next we have knee, and after knee there's gnaw, and then there's fnive, and this was originally just knife, but it was changed to fnive to stop confusion with knives, which is what gnomes use to cut up their vegetables. Next up we have sinks, that was originally inks, and it was changed to sinks because gnome children especially started to avoid it because its pronunciation was quite difficult. Next up we have gnome 7, and this is the most recent addition to the numbers, and it was actually taken from English, so the gnomes didn't discover it. Well, I suppose they did, but only after seeing it in English, and it's called gnome 7 to signify that it's the gnome 7 and not the English 7. Then we have ain't, and it was always called that, and before gnome 7 was discovered, it was considered a double integer between sinks and 9. Speaking of, we have 9, we have 10, 11, 12, it was taken from Elvish. Then we have the teens, the nerteen, naughteen, fnifteen, sixteen, gnome 17, 18, 19, and then we have 20. Here are the 20s. I don't feel like I need to read those out to you. After the 20s we have nernty. Here are the nernties, and then we have naunty, naunties. We have fnifnty, sixty, gnome 70, and I feel like I need to call some attention to gnome 70, gnome 7. I think that's a pretty interesting number, and we'll talk a little bit about that. Then we have the ainty, the ainties, and we have 90, and then we get to 100, and now you've got enough information to construct all the hundreds, so after this I'm just going to skip straight to 1,000, and now you have enough to calculate all the thousands, so after that there's a million. And so the gnome numbers keep going up, but they stop naming them after 9,999,999, and we don't know how many of these unnamed numbers there are, but gnomes sometimes give them their own personal names for personal use, like if it's a bank pin, I don't know how many bank pins have that many numbers, but maybe a phone number they'll give a personal name. And then after these unnamed numbers, we have gneven, and it's not 77. It's gneven. It's used to represent infinity. It does have an exact value, but nobody knows what it is, and it is the final number. No gnome has any reason to count past gneven. And because I mentioned it a bit before, I want to talk a bit about neology and the gnanon, which is the gnome theology and the gnome canon. So first we have the gnome mobile. As a human, you might be used to theology and canons being contained within books. All the gnome theology is within films. So after the gnome mobile, we have Romeo and Juliet, and we have Sherlock Gnomes. And so if I wanted to compare this to like the Bible, the gnome mobile would be the Old Testament, Romeo and Juliet would be the first part of the New Testament, Sherlock Gnomes would be the last part of the New Testament, along with like Revelation and stuff. And then we have Gnome Alone, which is a bit of a controversial one. It's a bit apocryphal in the gnome community. Not a lot of gnomes actually read it or actually watch it or believe in it. And I feel like I need to talk about the negative numbers. They're just the same as the positive numbers, but with a minus sign. And since I brought up the minus sign, I think it's good of me to talk about some basic arithmetic operators. So we've got the plus sign for addition, the minus sign, as I mentioned before, for subtraction, the times sign for multiplication, and the gneven sign for division. So those are all the... Now you know all the gnome numbers. So you can go and calculate numbers with gnomes if you want now. And if you want, just comment below and I can make another video about the more advanced arithmetic operators, and maybe even go into a bit of calculus if you want. Anyway, that's all I wanted to say today. Thank you.